Hey, Rob Travels with Dottie here, and I'm a little surprised at how much activity there's been on the channel responding to the full-time RVer legal issues. I did a video, then a follow-up video. I'm getting lots of questions and a lot more views. People are hungry for this kind of information, so I'm kind of forced to do another one because just there are things that were brought up and questions asked and things pointed out that made it worth doing another video. I don't think this will be very long, but the number one thing that people were curious about is domicile, legal residence. Are they the same thing? Are they different? What's the deal with domiciles and legal residency? Well, that opens up kind of a can of worms. Often domicile and legal residence or legal permanent residence are synonymous, but just the term domicile and residence can be very, very different things. So a domicile is your intended in, this is kind of legally, but this is not a legal channel, but I'm going to do my best here. A domicile is an intended permanent home. You can only have one at a time. And the basis for it is your intent and the evidence of that intent, meaning documentation that shows you have a lease or you have a bank account there, car registration, driver's license, etc. It affects your taxes, voting, things of that nature. And it's a common thing for nomads. Nomads talk about, where am I going to have my domicile? In most cases, where you're a resident, the state that you're a resident of, that's your domicile. But what about the whole idea of residence can be legally different. You can be a legal resident of more than one state. You say, well, how's that possible? Well, here's how it's possible. And it's important because as a nomad, you can easily get mixed up in this trap that could, I say could, in italicized and in quotes, cause you to get income tax in more than one state. You can get double taxed on your income. Well, how's that possible? Well, one, if your legal domicile where you declare your residency, and that's where you tend to live, no matter, how much traveling you do, this is where I live. For me right now, it's New Mexico. And New Mexico has a state income tax, right? So no matter where I am or what I'm doing, I have to report my income to the state of New Mexico because I'm a New Mexico resident. Even if I'm traveling around doing remote work. Where that becomes tricky is if I'm in another state, sometimes, and it depends on state law, if I'm in another state, and there's several states where if you're more here, I see 183 days a lot. I don't know why it's not 180, but 183, certainly that places you over a half a year in a place, then you must pay the income taxes in that state because you're physically there for that length of time. So theoretically, I could go and work in another state for 183 days and I would owe money for income tax for that state plus my income tax for New Mexico. And I'm sorry, I apologize that this gets complicated, but what complicates it more are a couple of things. There are states that have reciprocity agreements that you don't have to file. Like if Arizona and New Mexico have reciprocity, I don't know whether they do or not. I haven't checked that far. But if they have reciprocity, that means that if you're working in Arizona, you don't have to file Arizona taxes. You just file taxes in New Mexico. The other way that the double taxation is sometimes avoided is some states allow on your income tax form to declare that you're paying taxes to another state, and it'll deduct it from your state's taxes, so you're not double taxed. So those are at least 3 different circumstances that could have different outcomes. But it's important to understand that. And you can have more than one residence. You know, there are people that have a summer home. There are very rich people that have multiple homes throughout the country, and they are, quote, residents of those other states when they're living there in their other houses, but that's not their domicile. While the basis for domicile was intent and evidence, the basis for legal residency is time spent in statutory definitions by state. And it affects things like taxes, in-state tuition, and other benefits within the state. Now, what's interesting, make a point on New Mexico. In New Mexico, I've declared by action, by moving here, signing a lease, getting car insurance, getting health insurance, my bank accounts, all at my address here in New Mexico, and getting a driver's license and registering my vehicles and registering to vote. I have, by intent and evidence, created my domicile as New Mexico. However, New Mexico law states I can't get the tuition rates that are designed for permanent residents unless I can prove I've been here 12 consecutive months, which technically will probably never be the case for me. So there's a difference there too. That's why we say on legal residence, in that column we have in-state tuition and other benefits. Also, my domicile drives where I get, for like Medicare, if I get an Advantage plan or a Medicare supplement, the state where I am, the address, the zip code of my domicile determines what medical policies that I can have. And understand this. I had a 2 supplemental policies. I had a Plan D policy with United Healthcare in Nevada for my Medicare medications. I had a Plan G with ACE Insurance and Casualty. That's a Medigap plan. And here's what I found, interesting thing that I found out was on the United Healthcare plan, I called them up and said, hey, I'm moving from here to New Mexico. What do I need to do? And they said, well, we operate in both states, so we're going to change your address, and then we're going to rerun the rate. And the rate, I saved like $5 a month or something. And the thing that I was concerned with was I have one medication that I have is very expensive, and it requires pre-authorization by my doctor. And that was done earlier this year, and that is approved through the end of the year. And I was concerned that, do I have to jump through that hoop again because I moved? And they said, no, you're still good to the end of the year. So that was good news. When I called ACE Property and Casualty, they said, we're authorized too, and we can transfer your policy to New Mexico, which they did. And I looked up online and I saw the range of premiums for New Mexico, because the premiums are different depending on what state you live in and what zip code you're in. So I was all excited to get a reduction, and of like, I think I was paying $158 a month, and I was getting quotes of $118, $119 a month for them. So I was all excited, and then it didn't happen. This is a fascinating thing with this particular insurance company. I called them up and said, what gives? He said, well, if you want to keep that same policy, you have to pay the $158 that you signed up for. I said, okay. That doesn't make any sense. They said, well, you would have to cancel your policy and we'll write a new one. And you can get the lower rate. Would you like me to cancel your policy now? I said, yeah, as long as you can just rewrite another one. She said, well, we can't do that. We can cancel your policy, but you have to go through your agent to get the new policy. And I said, well, I don't have an agent. I had an agent in Nevada. They were only licensed in Nevada, and I didn't get one from here because I called you to transfer it. Well, I'm sorry, sir. There's nothing we can do. So I had to contact an agent, a new agent here in New Mexico, explain the situation. And it turns out that agent didn't have a relationship with ACE. So I was a little disappointed in that, but got talking to him and looking at other options. And he said, if you want to save a lot of money, here's an insurance company we can go with that, say it was $120 versus $158. And I was able to look at the various choices. And one was United Healthcare. In the United Healthcare, I saw, he quoted that, he said, that's going to cost you $1 more. That's going to cost you, instead of $158, that's going to cost you $159. And I wonder, well, why is that? And I looked, and it's for this very important reason. Now, if you're not about to get on Medicare or anything, you'll probably fast forward past this. It'll bore you. However, there's different ways of pricing these policies. One, the most inexpensive one when you're new, like me, 65, is age, by your age. I think it's called age attained. Anyway, that means that as you age, they're going to increase your rate because your age is increasing. And that can get, like the insurance guy said, that can get quite expensive. The more conservative one is called community pricing. Everyone in the community, like in your zip code, pays the same rate. Now, there's no way to know what that's going to be. I mean, if everyone in my community is 65 and they raise it the same rate, it could not do me any good. But chances are, over time, community-based pricing will be more favorable. So just because I can get one that starts at $120 a month versus the $159, in a few years, the $159 one could be a lot less money. So I decided to go with that one and have everything under United Healthcare. Only time will tell whether that's a good decision or not. But that has to do with federal regulations on how you can price Medicare products by region, by zip code. It really doesn't, but it does mean that you have to use your domicile, right? And remember, your domicile is your intended permanent home, and us full-timers call it our home base, really, is our nomad term for legal domicile. So important takeaways from this is that be careful if you're a nomad, you're traveling around a lot, and you're working in various different places. That can catch up to you from a state tax standpoint. Understand what the rules are in the states that you're working in, what mechanisms are being, especially if you're doing remote work, what mechanisms are being used to report to a state that you're working in that state. For example, when I do my counseling work, when I document it, it asks me, what state are you seeing the client from, where are you? And I tell them the state. Now, I don't know if that gets reported to the state or to the IRS. I have no idea. But I do know I'm providing that information to a computer program, and someone could find out, and ostensibly someone could say, hey, you did counseling sessions for 7 months in Arizona, therefore you're going to have to pay income tax in Arizona. I'm thinking this will probably be, for at least for a while, my last legal thing for nomads, but I felt like I had to do another one with all the questions and all the activity around it. And let me say this about what I notice when the volume gets up there, you get more people sort of, I need to call you out because you said this incorrect thing. And that happens, the more volume there is, the more people are coming in saying, Rob, you made a mistake, you give improper information. And I just want to tell you what I do, even if it's rudely worded or mean and nasty, I still check it out because I don't want to be giving out bad information in my videos. If I do a video and I say, 2 + 2 = 5, and I get a comment that says, no, you're wrong, 2 + 2 is 4, my friend, and I research it and find out they were right, I was wrong, I'm either going to put a huge disclaimer on the wrong video, if that's appropriate, but if the whole video is wrong, I'll take the video down, and I'll probably put a big post up on the community posts saying, I took this down because I did this video with this title and got this information wrong, and I apologize. If someone's calling me out in the comments saying this is wrong and this is what the truth is, and I research it and I find out that their information is not good, I usually will either ask the person to delete their comment, might give them my backup for what I'm saying, or more likely I'll just delete the comment myself because I don't want bad information to be in the comments. But I wanted to make it clear, if even someone calls me out in a nasty way, but they're right and I'm wrong, I might delete their comment if it's really rude or annoying. But I will check out what they say and take appropriate action and raise my hand when I'm wrong and say so. But hopefully that won't happen because I feel like I do a pretty good job of researching things. Now I want to close with just this little chart I got online of reasons for multi-state income tax liability that I've covered, but let's recap it. 1, living in one state and working in another. If you live in one state, but your job or business is located in another, you might have to file income tax returns and potentially pay taxes in both states. And 2 is kind of obvious. You move during the tax year. If you move from one state to another during the tax year, you might need to file part year resident taxes in both states, covering the portion of the year you resided in both. And that's just pretty much common sense. Remote work. Remote workers might face multi-state tax obligations depending on where they live and where their employer is based, especially if the states involved don't have reciprocity agreements. And where I am versus where my ultimate employer is and how that works, I don't know. I really don't know. And if someone does know about how that works, it's got to be different by state. That seems like a pretty complex issue. 4, owning property or conducting business in multiple states. Owning rental property, a farm, or having business interests like partnerships or S corporations in different states can trigger tax obligations in those states, even if you don't reside there. So my corporation is in Virginia, and though I'm licensed in Virginia and I have clients in Virginia, I'm rarely there. And my accountant had to do research to say, hey, do I need to file a Virginia tax return? And it wasn't a straightforward answer on whether I did or not. I'll put it to you that way. It was not straight. The answer was not obvious and straightforward. So you need to be careful about those kinds of things and rely on the advice of professionals to figure out your tax situation. So that is how you can avoid is here's this last chart. One were the reciprocity agreements. Some states have reciprocal agreements where residents in one state who work in the other are only taxed by the state of residence, simplifying that process. And you can Google that easily. Does Arizona and New Mexico have state tax reciprocity? And you know what? I said I didn't know, but let's do that. How's that? Let's do that. Let's see. Do Arizona and New Mexico have state income tax reciprocity? It says, no, Arizona and New Mexico do not have a state income tax reciprocity. What this means to you, if you live in New Mexico and work in Arizona, you'll generally need to file a non-resident tax return in Arizona for the income you earn there. You'll also need to file a resident tax return in New Mexico and report all of your income, including the income earned in Arizona. New Mexico will typically offer a credit for taxes paid to other states, which can help offset the Arizona income tax. The credit may not fully cover the tax owed in Arizona if Arizona's tax rate is higher than New Mexico's. Ouch. Let's try Arizona and what's another state that is Utah have income tax? We'll do Arizona and Utah. No, they don't have it either. What states does Arizona have tax reciprocity with? California, Indiana, Oregon, and Virginia. So you can work in Arizona and California, Indiana, Oregon, and Virginia. Let's see. What states does New Mexico have income tax reciprocity with? None. So that's pretty interesting stuff. So again, just to avoiding double taxation, see the reciprocity agreements. It doesn't look too promising for much of the Southwest. But credit for taxes paid to another state, there's limits to that. But when you start getting into this stuff, it's a good idea if you have a paid accountant, or at least maybe you have a friend that's a professional accountant. If you can't afford to pay a pro, this stuff can get complicated. So I hope today offered you a little bit more information. For those of you that wanted more, here's more. And if you have any other suggestions of things that I can research and check out, let me know and I'll do it. Take care.